The laughter echoed across the marble floor, light and sharp like broken glass under sunlight. I stood still, near the entrance of the Palm Coast Grand Hotel, watching my own family walk away without a glance. The irony was perfect. They didn't know I had paid for it all. Every room, every meal, every fake smile. They thought I was invisible. But that night, under the glow of Florida's warm sky, I decided something had to change. And it would. My name is Dolores Greene. I'm 70 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the one who quietly made things work. I'm the one who remembers birthdays, who cooks too much food, who sends money when bills are late. I used to think that was love, to give until nothing was left. But that night, in the middle of the hotel lobby, with their laughter still ringing in my ears, I realized I had become a stranger to myself. When my eldest son, Marcus, called about a family trip to reconnect, I felt something bloom inside me. A fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, we could start again. He asked if I could handle the reservation, said he'd reimburse me later. I didn't hesitate. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe in all of them. It took me 8 months to save enough. I sold pies every Sunday at the farmer's market, took in a few sewing jobs, and even sold my old wedding ring. That ring had been my only gold. But love, I told myself, mattered more than jewelry. I hid the cash in a cookie tin behind the cans of beans in my kitchen, a secret I thought no one would ever need to know. But now I stood in that lobby, the air scented with sunscreen and money, and realized my mistake. Marcus was laughing beside his wife, Camille. My daughter Renee scrolled through her phone, complaining about the old-fashioned decor. No one noticed I was still holding their room keys. Then Lily, my 16-year-old granddaughter, came to stand beside me. She didn't say much, just slipped her hand into mine and whispered, "Grandma, they're being cruel." Her voice trembled, and I knew she'd seen something. Minutes later, she showed me the group chat, a private thread titled "Vacation Without Drama." In it, my children and their spouses joked about keeping the trip peaceful by keeping Mom busy. Someone even wrote, "At least she paid for it, bless her heart." It felt like a slow, quiet punch. I didn't cry, I didn't speak. Instead, I heard a sound inside me, like a lock clicking shut. That was the moment I decided to stop begging for respect that should have been mine all along. I sat on one of the hotel's cream-colored sofas, watching the elevator lights blink floor after floor. A family passed by, laughing, a father carrying his daughter on his shoulders. I remembered Marcus at that age, small enough to hold in my arms, his eyes full of trust. Where had that boy gone? What had life done to him, or to me, that made him forget the hands that raised him? A woman at the front desk smiled politely. "Can I help you, ma'am?" she asked. "Yes," I said. My voice was calm, steady, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. "I just need a copy of all the reservations under my name." She printed the papers and handed them to me. Each page felt heavier than its weight, proof that I had built this vacation from nothing, and proof that I could take it all back. Later that evening, as the sun dipped into the Atlantic, the light turned the water bronze and forgiving. I sat outside on a wooden bench, the air warm against my skin. Lily came to sit beside me, quiet again. I looked at her and smiled. "They think they left me," I said softly, "but they just gave me the space I needed." That night, for the first time in years, I slept deeply. Tomorrow would come, and I would no longer be the woman they pitied or used. Tomorrow, I would be someone they finally saw, even if it was too late. Tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe. Sometimes taking back your dignity starts with one quiet decision. The call came on a quiet Tuesday night. I was folding towels still warm from the dryer, the kind of ordinary task that fills the silence. When my phone lit up with Marcus's name, my heart jumped before I could stop it. It had been weeks since I'd heard his voice. "Hey, Ma," he said, soft and casual, like he used to when he was still kind. "How are you holding up?" Something in his tone made me smile, a muscle memory more than joy. "I'm fine, baby. Just keeping busy," I said. He chuckled. Still selling those pies? Yes, I answered, careful not to sound proud or tired. They sell out every Sunday. There was a pause, one of those pauses that carry too much. Then came the pitch, smooth, rehearsed. Listen, we've all been talking. Camille and I, Renee too. We thought it might be nice to do something together. A family trip. Somewhere sunny. You know, to reconnect. The word reconnect hung in the air like perfume. Sweet, deceptive. I almost didn't trust my own happiness when it bloomed in my chest. That sounds lovely, I said, clutching the towel tighter. Marcus kept talking, his voice sliding between warmth and convenience. We were thinking Florida, somewhere by the ocean. Camille found this beautiful hotel on the coast, supposed to have amazing reviews. You're better with details than any of us, Ma. Maybe you could handle the reservation. I'll send you the info and I'll reimburse you right after payday. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Of course, sweetheart. I can do that. He thanked me too quickly, a sign I missed until much later, and ended the call with a cheerful, "Love you, Ma." When the line went silent, I stood there, surrounded by folded towels that suddenly felt like promises I shouldn't have made. That night, I opened my old laptop, its screen flickering like a candle. The hotel looked perfect. White balconies, palm trees bending toward the sea, smiling families in linen clothes. I imagined us there, laughing, finally talking. Maybe they'd see me again, not as a burden, but as their mother. The next morning, I went to the bank. The teller smiled. The air smelled faintly of coffee and paper. I withdrew my savings in cash, small bills that had taken months to gather. Then I walked to the pawn shop at the corner. The owner recognized me. "Back again, Miss Greene?" he said gently. I took off my wedding ring, the thin band that had survived 50 years and too many storms. I didn't let my hand tremble. "For something important," I told him. He nodded, no questions asked. When he placed the cash on the counter, I didn't see money. I saw love, faith, maybe a second chance. Back home, I opened the cookie tin behind the cans of beans. Inside was the life I'd been saving one pie at a time. I counted the bills, whispering to myself as if the numbers were prayers. When the total matched the cost of the family trip, I smiled for the first time in weeks. 2 days later, I called Marcus to confirm. He sounded distracted. "That's great, Ma. You're the best," he said over background noise. Laughter, music, someone calling his name. "Just send me the booking details when it's all done." That little ache behind my ribs returned, but I brushed it away. "I will, baby," I said. When I hung up, I sat by the window watching the Florida lights spill across my kitchen table. Dust floated through it like tiny ghosts of all the times I'd believed too easily. The week before the trip, I packed my bag neatly, dresses folded, sensible shoes, the good scarf I wore to church on Easter. Lily called one evening, her voice bright. "Grandma, are you excited?" "Yes, darling," I said. "More than you can imagine." She hesitated. "Mom says you're handling all the rooms. That's a lot, huh?" "It's fine," I said, forcing a smile into my voice. "Your grandma knows how to manage things." But that night, while I checked the confirmation email from the hotel, a small unease stirred in my stomach. The reservation was under my name, every charge linked to my card, no one else's. Still, I chose hope over suspicion. Hope that maybe this was what forgiveness looked like, paying in advance for love you hadn't yet received. The morning of our departure, I stood at the station with my suitcase, feeling both proud and foolish. The Florida sun rose high, golden and indifferent. When Marcus's car pulled up, he didn't get out to help with my luggage. He honked once, impatiently, and shouted, "Let's go, Ma! We're running late!" I smiled anyway and climbed in. Because that's what mothers do. Even when the ride is heading somewhere they can already feel will hurt. The morning air carried the smell of rain and salt from the coast, a scent that always reminded me of beginnings. I sat at the small kitchen table, surrounded by the tools of my second life. Pie tins, stacks of flour bags, and the old blue cookie tin that had become my private bank. Every dollar in that tin had a story. Every wrinkle in my hands told how long it took to earn them. When I started saving, it was never for me. It was for birthdays, for emergencies, for the days my children called, with voices dripping in worry and guilt. But this time was different. I was saving for hope, a trip that might bring us back together. On Sundays, I sold sweet potato pies at the church fair in Jacksonville. Folks came early, drawn by the smell, and sometimes stayed to talk. "Dolores, you put magic in this crust," one woman said once, laughing. I smiled, thinking if only she knew how much prayer was needed into it. The money I made was never much, but steady. A few bills folded in my apron pocket, the rest hidden deep in my purse until I got home. Each night, I'd slip into the kitchen quietly, open the cabinet where I kept the beans, and reach behind them for the tin. Inside, the bills were soft and warm from my hands, layered between old grocery receipts. I'd whisper to them like children asleep, "You'll make us a family again." The first few months went slowly. There were nights when my knees ached too much to bake, mornings when the Florida heat made the dough sweat before I could roll it. Still, I worked, because the dream was louder than the pain. When a local diner owner asked if I could make extra pies for his weekend crowd, I said yes before he finished the sentence. It meant longer hours, cracked fingertips, but also progress. Every Sunday, when I closed my eyes in the church pew, I pictured the ocean, my family together, laughing without bitterness. Then came the day I found the ring. I was cleaning out a drawer, looking for something to sell at the yard sale, when the little velvet box fell open. My wedding ring, thin, worn, but still shining like forgiveness. I held it for a long time. I thought of the man who'd given it to me, the promises we'd made before life got hard. That ring had survived hurricanes and heartbreak. But love doesn't live in metal. Love lives in the sacrifices you make to keep others safe. So I took it to the pawn shop downtown. The clerk, an old man with kind eyes, didn't ask questions. He looked at me as if he knew that sometimes selling what's precious is the only way to keep your heart intact. When he placed the cash on the counter, I felt both lighter and emptier. The bills went straight into the tin that night. I sat beside it, the sound of thunder rolling outside, and whispered, "Just a little longer." Weeks passed. I skipped small luxuries. No new shoes, no fresh flowers, not even my favorite tea. I told the neighbors I was saving for something special, but didn't say what. Hope is fragile when spoken aloud. When the day finally came to pay for the reservation, I poured the contents of the tin onto the table. The smell of flour and coins filled the air. My hands trembled as I counted. Once, twice, 3 times. The total matched the invoice almost exactly. It felt like fate giving me a nod. I drove to the bank under a sky half blue, half threatening rain. Inside, the air conditioning bit at my skin. The teller smiled politely, unaware she was watching a woman trade years of quiet sacrifice for a few lines on a computer screen. When the transaction was done, I signed the receipt and folded it neatly into my wallet next to a photo of Marcus as a boy. His smile in that picture was pure, trusting. Back home, I placed the empty cookie tin on the counter. It made a hollow sound, a small, metallic echo that lingered too long. I stared at it, realizing it wasn't just empty. It was proof that I had given everything again. Still, I smiled. Because sometimes love looks like faith, even when you have no reason left to believe. The first crack in the dream appeared before we even left Jacksonville. Marcus called 3 days before the trip, his voice sharp with impatience. "Ma, did you book the ocean view rooms or not? Camille wants the suite with the balcony." I paused, holding the phone between my shoulder and ear while folding clothes. "I did, sweetheart. I already paid the deposit. I made sure everyone had a good room." "Yeah, but you didn't check with us first," he said, irritation bleeding through his words. "Camille doesn't want to be near the elevators. The noise bothers her." I bit my tongue. The noise bothers her? I wanted to say I was the one who hadn't slept properly in months, worrying about making everything perfect. But instead, I just said, "I'll see what I can do." "Thanks, Ma," he said, already distracted. "You're the best." Then the line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, that cold sting of being useful but unseen. 2 hours later, my daughter Renee called. "Mom," she began, in that clipped tone she used when she thought she was being polite. "Did you make sure the hotel has vegan options? Trevor doesn't eat anything that used to breathe." I looked at the empty pie crust cooling on the counter. "I'll call and ask," I said. "You should have done that before booking," she replied, a sharp little laugh hiding in her voice. "You always rush into things." When the call ended, I sat in silence, the smell of baked crust filling the kitchen. My hands were trembling. The first tears didn't fall, not yet. I was still holding on to hope that these were small things, fixable things. But hope can be cruel when it insists on staying. That night, Lily came over after school. She kicked off her sneakers by the door and looked at me. "Grandma, what's wrong?" "Nothing, baby," I said too quickly. "Just tired." She frowned. "Mom said you forgot to send her the hotel address." "I sent it yesterday," I said. "Yeah, that's what I told her," Lily sighed. "She just likes finding reasons to complain." I smiled, weary. "You shouldn't talk about your mama that way." "She shouldn't talk to you that way," Lily answered softly. The house was quiet for a long while after that. I kept folding. She kept scrolling through her phone. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, that low growl the Florida sky makes when it's deciding whether to break. The next morning, I called the hotel to double-check the reservations. The manager, a polite man named Robert, confirmed everything was in order. "All rooms under your name, Mrs. Greene," he said. That phrasing, "under your name," echoed in my chest. I asked him to email the confirmation again. When it arrived, I read it twice. Every charge, every room, every meal plan, all on my card. No one else's. A strange chill crawled up my spine, but I shook it off. "They'll pay me back," I told myself. They promised. On the day of departure, Marcus and Camille arrived late, arguing about luggage. Renee and Trevor followed, both scrolling on their phones, barely looking up. I smiled through the chaos, telling myself it was just family noise. At the airport, when the clerk asked for payment confirmation for the hotel transfer, Marcus looked at me and said, "You've got that right, Ma?" It was the tone that did it. Not a question, not gratitude, just expectation. As if it were written somewhere that I was responsible for making life easy for them. I nodded slowly. "Yes, I've got it." He turned away before I finished the sentence. On the plane, I watched clouds drift by and thought about all the years I'd spent believing that love meant being needed. Maybe that was the lie that kept me obedient. When we landed in Palm Coast, the air was thick with salt and sun. The hotel shimmered ahead, tall and white, the kind of place I'd only ever seen on postcards. The doormen smiled, the bellhop reached for the bags. For a moment, I let myself feel proud. I brought us here. But pride can't survive long in the company of people who don't respect you. At the check-in desk, Marcus stepped forward, smiling too widely. "We're the Greene family," he said, motioning toward me. "She'll handle everything." The clerk nodded and asked for my ID and card. I slid them across the counter, my fingers stiff. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Camille whisper something that made Renee laugh. The sound sliced through me like thin glass. I told myself to breathe, to stay calm. The vacation was just beginning. There was still time to fix what was broken. Or so I thought. The drive from the airport to the hotel took less than an hour, but it felt longer. The road wound along the Florida coast, sunlight flashing against the water like silver knives. Marcus kept the radio loud. Camille hummed tunelessly, and I sat in the back seat beside Lily, my hands folded neatly in my lap. Every time I tried to speak, my words were drowned out by laughter or music. When the hotel finally came into view, it rose like a postcard, white balconies lined with palms, glass doors reflecting the ocean. I felt a swell of pride. I made this happen. For a second, I almost forgot how tired I was. As we pulled into the driveway, a valet opened Marcus's door first. He stepped out, stretching, then gestured lazily toward the back. "You can grab Mom's bag, too," he said, not even looking at me. The young man nodded, polite but unsure, and lifted my worn suitcase from the trunk. I wanted to tell Marcus to stop, to treat me with the respect he'd show a stranger. But I didn't. Old habits die slow. Inside, the lobby shimmered. Marble floors, soft jazz, air conditioning cold enough to sting the skin. Families moved around us in bright resort clothes, their voices bubbling with excitement. I could almost pretend we were one of them. But then Camille leaned close to Marcus and whispered something. He laughed, short and sharp, like he was spitting out a seed. Renee joined in, shaking her head. I didn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. The tone was enough. At the reception desk, the clerk smiled. "Welcome to the Palm Coast Grand. Name, please?" Marcus motioned toward me. "All under her name." The clerk turned to me expectantly. "Of course, Mrs. Greene." I reached for my purse, my fingers brushing the edge of my wallet. "Yes," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "It's all prepaid." The clerk confirmed it quickly, printing receipts and handing them to me. Marcus didn't glance at them, didn't even ask. Camille and Renee were already talking about spa appointments. I caught my reflection in the lobby mirror. A woman standing still while her family rushed ahead, the weight of invisible years pressing on her shoulders. I smiled at myself because crying here would have been a kind of defeat. "Come on, Ma," Marcus called. "You're holding up the line." I nodded and followed, each step measured, each breath controlled. The bellhop guided us toward the elevator, his cart stacked high with luggage that wasn't mine. When the doors opened, they rushed in, laughing, already talking about dinner reservations. I was the last to step inside. As the elevator rose, Camille looked at her phone, then turned to Marcus. "Oh, by the way, we decided we'll do our own thing tomorrow. You and I need some couple time." Marcus nodded easily. "Yeah, Ma, you can hang out with Renee or Lily. We'll see you later." It was as if the trip I'd spent months paying for had already left me behind. When the elevator doors opened again, I followed them down the carpeted hall. The air smelled faintly of coconut lotion and new paint. The ocean glimmered outside the wide windows, beautiful and unreachable. Marcus handed out key cards like a game show host. "Camille and I are in 504, Renee and Trevor in 506, Lily with you in 508. I looked at him, surprised. "With me?" "Yeah, figured it made sense," he said, already turning toward his door. Before I could reply, Renee laughed. "Don't worry, Mom. We'll give you some peace and quiet." The words stung because they weren't kind. They were dismissal, disguised as generosity. When Lily and I entered our room, she dropped her bag on the bed and sighed. "It's nice," she said softly, glancing at me. "But they shouldn't treat you like that." I smiled faintly, brushing her hair from her face. "Don't you worry, baby." "Some lessons take time to teach," she frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, turning toward the window, "I've been silent a long time. But silence doesn't mean I don't see." Outside, the waves rolled endlessly against the sand, patient, unstoppable. I pressed my hand against the glass, the coolness anchoring me. I had brought them here out of love, but standing in that room, I felt something shift. It wasn't anger yet, not quite. It was awareness, sharp, clear, like the sunlight cutting through the water. And I knew, deep down, this trip wasn't going to heal anything. It was going to show me the truth I'd been too afraid to face. It was late afternoon when the illusion began to crack for good. The Florida sun was beginning to fade, laying gold over the ocean, and Lily sat cross-legged on the bed, scrolling through her phone with a frown too heavy for her age. I was unpacking slowly, hanging dresses that had been ironed twice, smoothing out wrinkles like I could erase years of disappointment. Then she said it, soft, hesitant. "Grandma, can I show you something?" I turned, expecting a photo, maybe a video, but her eyes looked different. Sorry eyes, scared eyes. She bit her lip and held out the phone. I wasn't supposed to see it. It popped up on Aunt Renee's iPad when I went to grab it. On the screen, I saw a group chat. The title hit first, "Vacation Without Drama." My stomach tightened. Lily scrolled slowly, her thumb shaking. "They talk about you here." At first, I didn't believe her. I leaned closer, and then I read. Camille. We just need to keep her busy. Maybe she can do some of the cooking if the suite has a kitchen. Renee. Please no. Let's not spend the trip babysitting guilt. Trevor. I just hope she doesn't start crying. That would ruin everything. Marcus. Chill, it's fine. At least she paid for it. Bless her heart. Each line burned deeper. I could almost hear their voices, jokes built on the bones of my sacrifice. Lily whispered, I told you not to come, Grandma. They don't deserve you. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words on the screen blurred until they became shapes of betrayal. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, my breath caught somewhere between a sob and a laugh. Bless her heart. That phrase, I'd heard it all my life. Sweet on the surface, cruel underneath. The southern way to stab someone politely. I put the phone down, my hands trembling just enough to make the air feel colder. They think I don't see, I said quietly. But I've always seen. Lily reached for me, her small hand steady on mine. You don't have to take this. I know, I said. My voice surprised me. It wasn't breaking. It was calm, steady, almost new. But I need to. We sat there in silence for a long time. Outside, the waves kept rolling, steady and endless. I thought about the pies, the ring, the nights alone in the kitchen counting cash by the light of the stove. All of it to be mocked in a group chat. When Lily left to meet her mother for dinner, I stayed behind. The room felt heavy, but not with sadness, with decision. I walked to the mirror and looked at myself. For the first time, I didn't see a mother or a grandmother. I saw a woman who had spent 70 years giving and was finally learning the cost of it. I took the phone again, scrolled to the top of the chat, and stared at Marcus's name. The boy who used to run to me when he scraped his knees. The man who now laughed about my money like it was pocket change. I whispered, You taught me that love was giving, Marcus. But you forgot to teach me how to stop. Then I smiled, not out of joy, but clarity. I forwarded the messages to my own email. Proof. Then I deleted the chat from Lily's phone. She didn't need to see it again. When I stepped outside, the air was cooler. The sky over Palm Coast was a bruise of purple and orange. Down below, families gathered for dinner at the outdoor restaurant, their laughter soft and innocent, the kind I used to believe in. I walked along the balcony, feeling the wind tug at my scarf, and thought about all the times I had forgiven too easily. Maybe forgiveness is just another word for fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being unloved. But tonight, the silence didn't scare me. It steadied me. When I went back inside, I wrote something in my small notebook. They think they're laughing at me, but they're teaching me who I am. And as I closed it, the first thought of what I'd do next came quietly, like a whisper in the tide. Not revenge, but justice. The next morning began with the sound of gulls and the crash of waves against the shore. Sunlight leaked through the curtains like it had something to prove. I sat at the small table by the window, turning my coffee cup slowly in my hands. The laughter from Marcus's room echoed faintly through the hall. They were awake early, full of joy that wasn't meant to include me. Lily was still asleep, her curls spread over the pillow. I watched her for a moment and thought of all the women in our family, how each one learned too late that giving too much turns you invisible. On the dresser sat my jewelry pouch, half empty. I picked it up, opened it, and stared at the space where my wedding ring used to rest. Funny how absence can have a weight of its own. That small gold band had once meant forever. It had meant partnership, loyalty, safety. Now it was gone, turned into the money that had paid for this trip, this betrayal. I traced the outline it had left on my finger, a pale circle like a ghost of devotion. When I sold it, the pawnshop clerk had looked at me as if he wanted to ask why. I'd smiled politely and said, "Family vacation." He'd nodded, counting the bills slowly, and I'd wondered if he knew that what I was really selling wasn't gold. It was the last piece of hope that someone would ever keep their promise to me. I walked to the mirror and studied my reflection. My skin, my eyes, the fine lines carved deep by years of work and worry. There was beauty there, though not the kind my children would ever notice. It was the beauty of endurance, the quiet power of a woman who has survived without applause. On the nightstand sat my old Bible, the one my mother gave me. I hadn't opened it in months. I reached for it now, not for comfort, but for grounding. Inside, tucked between Psalms and Proverbs, was a folded receipt from the hotel, the full balance charged to my card. I stared at the numbers until they blurred, thinking of how many pies, how many late nights, how many hours of aching knees it had taken to earn them. A knock came at the door. It was Renee. "Breakfast, Mom?" she asked, too cheerful. I hesitated, then opened the door. She was dressed perfectly. Linen dress, gold earrings, her husband behind her with his sunglasses already on. "We're heading down. Come on, you don't want to miss the buffet." I forced a smile. "I'll be there in a minute." She nodded, but didn't wait. "Don't take too long," she said, already halfway down the hall. When the door clicked shut, I exhaled slowly. My hands were trembling again. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was disappointed in a way that reached bone deep. I turned back to the window, the view stretching endlessly, ocean, sky, sunlight. Somewhere out there, the ring I once wore had been melted, reshaped, repurposed for someone else's love story. Maybe that was fitting, because I was about to reshape mine too. I reached for my notebook and wrote, "They took the gold, but they can't take the lesson." Lily stirred behind me. "Morning," she mumbled, still sleepy. "Are we going to breakfast?" "In a bit," I said softly. "There's something I need to think about first." She yawned and nodded, trusting. I smiled at her, my reminder of innocence still unbroken. When I looked back at the ocean, something inside me steadied. All my life I'd believed that love and loyalty were the same thing. But loyalty without respect is just another form of servitude. The ring had been proof of devotion, and I had traded it for a test of truth. The truth was ugly, but it was mine. I pressed my palm to the glass, the Florida sun warming my skin, and whispered, "You sold a ring to buy your freedom, Dolores. Don't waste it." The words hung there, quiet but powerful. And for the first time, they didn't feel like defiance. They felt like a promise. By the second day, the thin thread holding my patience together had started to fray. The hotel smelled of coconut lotion and ocean wind, but even beauty can turn sour when you feel unwelcome. Breakfast had been chaos, laughter that left me out, inside jokes traded like currency. Marcus and Camille sat close together, scrolling through their phones. Renee argued with Trevor about where to shop. No one noticed I hadn't eaten. My plate was still full when the waiter came to clear it. "Everything all right, ma'am?" he asked quietly. I smiled the kind of smile women my age learn to wear. "Everything's fine, sweetheart." But it wasn't. When we stepped outside after breakfast, the heat pressed against my chest like a weight. Marcus tossed me the car keys. "We're taking the other car, Ma. You can keep this one." "Maybe take Lily to see the boardwalk or something," Camille added. "We'll be gone most of the day. Spa appointment, then dinner with Trevor and Renee. Don't wait up." It wasn't the words that hurt. It was the tone. Flat, dismissive. As if I were a hotel guest they'd rather not see too often. I nodded and watched them leave. The valet drove off with their rental, and soon all I could hear was the sea and the faint buzz of cicadas. Lily came running from the lobby, holding 2 cones of melting ice cream. "They left already?" she asked, handing one to me. "Yes," I said, forcing lightness into my voice. "Guess it's just us, baby." We sat by the pool, the air thick with chlorine and laughter from other families. Lily licked her ice cream thoughtfully. "Grandma, why do they treat you like that?" Her question cut deeper than any insult. I stared at the water, the reflections dancing like small lies. "Sometimes people mistake kindness for weakness," I said. "And when they do it long enough, they forget where kindness came from." She frowned. "That's not fair." "No," I said softly. "It's not." Later, back in our room, I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow circles. Every turn sounded like a clock ticking down to something inevitable. The exhaustion wasn't just physical. It was the kind that seeps into your bones after years of swallowing your own pain. The phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "Ma, can you check with the front desk about adding 2 more nights? Camille thinks we should extend the trip. No, please. No, thank you. Just assumption." I typed back slowly. "I'll see what I can do." Lily looked up from her book. "Are they coming back soon?" "Not tonight," I said. She nodded. "Then let's go to the beach." It was her idea that saved me that day. We walked along the shoreline barefoot, the sand cool now that the sun had softened. The waves crashed against our ankles, erasing our footprints as fast as we made them. Lily chased the foam, laughing, her joy pure and unfiltered. I watched her, feeling the ache in my chest ease just a little. For a few moments, I remembered what it felt like to be seen, truly seen, by someone who loved me without taking from me. When we sat down to rest, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "You know," she said quietly, "you don't always have to be nice." Her words startled me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you can say no," she said. "Even to family." The wind carried her voice away, but the message stayed. It echoed louder than the ocean. As the sky turned orange and the day began to fade, I realized how heavy pride can become when it's the only thing keeping you upright. I had spent so many years being the strong one, the calm one, the understanding one. But strength without peace is just another form of exhaustion. When we walked back to the hotel, I stopped by the lobby desk and asked for a printed copy of all charges under my name. The clerk hesitated but complied. I took the papers, folded them neatly, and slipped them into my purse. By the time we reached our room, I was no longer tired. I was done. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, I couldn't rest. The laughter of strangers drifted up from the courtyard below, families sharing desserts, couples clinking glasses. Every sound seemed to mock me, reminding me that happiness could be simple for some people. I slipped on my sandals and stepped out, careful not to wake her. The elevator hummed softly as it carried me down. When the doors opened, the lobby glowed in that too-perfect way hotels do. Polished marble, soft jazz, the scent of gardenias pumped in through hidden vents. Everything was warm and bright, yet I had never felt colder. I sat on one of the couches near the fountain. The water trickled rhythmically, the kind of sound that's supposed to calm you, but it only made my thoughts louder. From where I sat, I could see reflections in the glass. My family at dinner earlier, heads bent over plates, barely a glance in my direction. I had smiled then, pretending it didn't sting, pretending that being left out was just a misunderstanding. But sitting here now, under the soft hotel lights, I couldn't pretend anymore. I looked around at the other guests, a mother helping her toddler with a juice box, an older couple holding hands, a group of friends snapping photos. And I thought, I paid for this happiness. All of it. The absurdity of it made me laugh, quietly at first, then a little louder. A security guard glanced over, concerned. I waved it off. "Just a funny thought," I said, and he nodded politely, moving on. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Ma, tomorrow we're doing the dolphin tour. You and Lily can join if you want, but make sure to confirm the tickets. They're under your name." I stared at the message, reading it twice. He had turned me into a secretary for my own generosity. I typed out a reply. "Sure, honey. Have a good night." Then I deleted it before hitting send. What was the point? Words had lost their meaning between us. The front desk clerk, Robert, the one with kind eyes, approached me. "Mrs. Greene, is everything okay? You've been sitting here a while." I nodded, smiling faintly. "Just can't sleep." He hesitated. "Would you like some tea sent up to your room?" I shook my head. "No, thank you. I just needed to remember where I am." He smiled politely and walked away, but his question lingered in my chest like a riddle. Where am I? I wasn't in my home, though I had built one from scratch. I wasn't with my family, though I had given them everything. I was in a hotel lobby in Florida, a woman surrounded by beauty she paid for but couldn't touch. The irony was sharp. I pulled the folded receipts from my purse and laid them on my lap. Every page had my name, Dolores Greene, printed neatly beside charges for rooms, meals, activities. The proof of my worth reduced to transactions. The fountain's rhythm filled the silence. Somewhere above, I imagined Marcus and Camille asleep in a bed paid for with my sacrifices. Maybe they dreamed of tomorrow's adventures, of sun and laughter, of a life where their mother didn't exist except as a card number. My throat tightened. For a long time, I had confused usefulness with love. But usefulness ends the moment you stop giving. Love, real love, doesn't. I folded the receipts again and tucked them back into my purse. My reflection in the glass looked different now. Older, yes, but sharper, clearer. There was a strength in her eyes I hadn't seen before. As I stood to leave, I whispered to myself, "You don't owe them your silence." The words hung in the air like a promise. I walked back to the elevator, the sound of my sandals echoing against the marble floor. With every step, I felt something heavy loosening its grip. In the brightly lit lobby of a hotel I had paid for but didn't belong in, I found a strange kind of freedom, the beginning of my anger. Back in the room, the air was still and heavy. Lily slept soundly, one hand tucked beneath her cheek, the other clutching her stuffed dolphin from the gift shop. I sat by the window, the moonlight spilling across the carpet like milk. The hotel corridor outside hummed faintly with footsteps, laughter, distant elevator chimes, the soundtrack of a life that didn't include me. I opened my notebook, the one I always carried, its pages soft and bent at the corners. Tonight, it wasn't for prayer or memory. Tonight, it was for planning. I wrote one sentence: "Enough is enough." The words looked strange at first, almost foreign. For 70 years, I'd written lists of things to do for others: groceries, birthdays, payments, errands. This was the first time I'd written something for myself. I stared at those 3 words until they steadied me. I took a deep breath and reached for my purse, pulling out the folder of receipts. The pages whispered as I unfolded them: room charges, spa bookings, restaurant bills, all tied to my name. All proof of how invisible I had become. From the next room came faint laughter, Marcus's voice deep and carefree, Camille's high and sharp. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was enough. I had paid for their comfort, and they were using it to mock me. For a long while, I just listened. To the waves outside, to the pulse of my own heart, to the fragile sound of patience breaking. Then I stood. The night was quiet as I slipped into my sandals and left the room. I didn't take my phone. I didn't take my sweater, just my purse, and the calm that comes when fear runs out. The elevator doors opened with a sigh. The lobby was dimmer now, most of the guests asleep. The night clerk looked up from his computer. "Mrs. Greene," he said softly. "Can't sleep again?" "Not tonight," I answered. "But I need to make a few changes." He straightened, uncertain. "Of course, ma'am. What kind of changes?" I smiled, gentle, polite, practiced. "Room arrangements, billing. Some things need to be corrected." He nodded, professional but cautious. "If you'd like, I can print everything out again." "Yes," I said, "and I'd like to move my room too, something quieter, away from the others." He hesitated. "Is everything all right?" "It will be," I said simply. While he worked, I watched the fountain again. The same steady trickle I'd listened to hours earlier. But it sounded different now, not mocking, steady, focused. When he handed me the papers, I scanned them carefully. "I'll need these reservations separated," I said. "All rooms except mine, canceled by morning. You can move me to another floor." He blinked, surprised. "You're sure?" I nodded. Completely. There was something almost holy about that moment, a peace that didn't come from forgiveness, but from decision. When I returned upstairs, I stood outside Marcus's door for a long time. I could hear their TV still on, the low rumble of a sitcom laugh track. I thought of all the nights I'd stayed awake worrying about him, praying over him, defending him when others judged him. I thought of the little boy he once was, the man he had become, and the woman who had enabled it all. Then I whispered, "Tomorrow, you'll finally learn who I am." I walked back to my room and slipped under the covers beside Lily. The moonlight had shifted, painting the walls silver. My hands trembled slightly as I turned off the lamp. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, it was deep, not from exhaustion, but release. Tomorrow would be the first day in decades that I wouldn't apologize for being myself. Morning sunlight cut through the curtains like a blade, bright and merciless. The ocean outside sparkled, loud and careless in its joy. It was the kind of day built for forgetting. But I was done forgetting. Lily was still asleep when I slipped out of bed. I made coffee in the small machine by the window, its bitter smell grounding me. On the desk sat the folder of receipts and the notepad where I had written my 3-word manifesto. Enough is enough. I stared at it for a long time, tracing each letter with my fingertip. Then I reached for my phone. The call to the bank began like any other. Robotic greetings, waiting music, polite small talk. But the calm in my voice surprised even me. "Good morning," I said when a representative finally answered. "My name is Dolores Greene. I'd like to report potential misuse of my card and to place a hold on all future transactions at the Palm Coast Grand Hotel." The woman on the other end sounded cheerful, unaware she was stepping into the middle of a storm. "Of course, Mrs. Greene. Can you tell me what's happening?" I explained slowly, carefully, how multiple rooms and charges had been made under my name without proper consent. I didn't mention that the culprits were my own children. I wasn't ready to hear the disbelief that would follow. "So you'd like to freeze the card for now?" she asked. "Yes," I said, my tone even. "And I'll need written confirmation sent to my email. No charges approved without my voice authorization." She typed quickly. I could hear the soft rhythm of her keyboard, each keystroke sounding like an erasure of old habits. "Done," she said finally. "You're all set, Mrs. Greene. Anything else I can help with?" I hesitated. "You've already helped more than you know." When I hung up, I sat very still. My pulse was steady, my breathing slow. For the first time in years, I had drawn a line. And it held. A knock sounded at the door. I opened it to find Marcus, wearing sunglasses and a forced smile. "Morning, Ma. We're heading out for brunch. You coming?" I stepped aside just enough so he could see the papers spread neatly on the desk. The receipts, the notepad, the steady hand of someone who had stopped asking permission. "I've got a few things to take care of," I said. "You go on ahead." He shrugged, unfazed. "Cool. Oh, by the way, can you call the bank later? They flagged one of my card payments, said something about fraud." My stomach tightened, but my voice stayed calm. "I'm sure they did." He blinked. "You know anything about that?" I met his gaze for the first time in days. "Marcus, sometimes the things we take for granted stop working when we misuse them." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just that actions have consequences," I said softly. He stared for a moment longer, uncertain, then shook his head. "Whatever, Ma. We'll be back later." When the door closed, I exhaled. My hands trembled for only a moment before settling again. I called the hotel front desk next. Robert answered, his tone polite but wary. "Good morning, Mrs. Greene." "Robert," I said, "I'll need to confirm something. As of now, all charges under my name are to be placed on hold. No additions, no extensions, no transfers." He paused. "Understood, ma'am. Would you like me to note that the cardholder must authorize any changes in person?" "Yes," I said. "Exactly that." I hung up and leaned back against the chair. The sun poured through the window, hot and relentless, but for the first time, it didn't burn. It felt clean. Lily stirred behind me. "Grandma?" I turned, smiling softly. "Good morning, baby." She rubbed her eyes. "You okay?" "I'm better than okay," I said. "I'm taking care of business." She grinned sleepily. "Does that mean they're in trouble?" "Not yet," I said, a hint of steel in my tone. "But they will be." She laughed, not fully understanding. I looked back out the window at the waves crashing against the shore, each one erasing the footprints before it. The tide was turning. By mid-morning, the Florida sun had turned the hotel's glass walls into mirrors. Every reflection looked brighter than it should, as if the world were showing off. I walked through the lobby with the same calm I used to walk into Sunday service, slow, deliberate, knowing exactly why I was there. Robert, the front desk clerk, noticed me right away. His polite smile flickered into concern. "Mrs. Greene," he said, stepping out from behind the counter. "Good to see you again. Everything all right?" "Yes," I said. "I just need to speak with your manager, please." He nodded and disappeared into the back office. I stood waiting, watching the tourists drift by with their beach bags and wide smiles. Their laughter sounded easy, honest, the kind that doesn't hide cruelty beneath it. The manager appeared a moment later, a tall man in a navy suit, maybe in his 40s, with eyes that had seen every kind of guest problem there was. He extended his hand. "Good morning, Mrs. Greene. I'm Mr. Harris. How can I assist you today?" I shook his hand, firm and steady. "I'm sure you have plenty to do, so I'll get straight to it," I said. "There's been a change in my reservations. As of this morning, I'm taking full control of all rooms under my name. I'd like to move myself and my granddaughter to another suite on a separate floor, and I'll need all other rooms under my reservation canceled." He blinked, his professional calm wavering just slightly. "All other rooms, ma'am? That includes your family's accommodations?" "Yes," I said. "Especially theirs." He hesitated, his expression shifting between confusion and respect. "May I ask if there's a particular reason for this?" "There are several," I replied. "But let's just say there's been a misunderstanding, one I intend to correct quietly." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "I understand. I'll need a few minutes to adjust the system. We'll, of course, waive any penalties." "Thank you," I said, my voice softer now. "And please, keep this between us until tomorrow morning." His eyes met mine, and something in them softened. "Of course, Mrs. Greene. Discretion is part of the job." While he worked, I wandered to the edge of the lobby where a grand piano sat unused. A young couple posed for photos nearby, the woman twirling her hair, her laughter easy. I remembered being that young once, believing that family meant safety, that love guaranteed loyalty. When Mr. Harris returned, he held out a folder. "Here are your updated documents. Room 92, Ocean View. We'll transfer your belongings while you're at lunch if you'd like." "That would be perfect," I said, taking the papers. He hesitated again, lowering his voice. "Mrs. Greene, if I may, whatever this is about, I hope you're doing what's best for you." I smiled faintly. For the first time in a long time, I am. As I walked away, I felt the smallest tremor in my chest. Not fear, not guilt. Freedom. When I reached the elevator, I pressed the button and waited. My reflection in the mirrored doors was calm, composed. The same woman my children thought they could overlook was about to teach them what strength really looked like. The doors opened, and Lily's voice called out from behind me. "Grandma, there you are!" She ran up, slightly out of breath. "Mom's looking for you. She said you need to approve something with the hotel." I smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "I already did, sweetheart." She tilted her head. "What did you do?" "Just made a few changes," I said, ushering her into the elevator. "You'll see tomorrow." She grinned, curious but trusting, and I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. As the elevator climbed, I felt lighter than I had in years. Every floor we passed felt like a chapter closing behind me, one built on obligation, guilt, and exhaustion. By the time the doors opened to our new floor, I wasn't just a guest anymore. I was a woman reclaiming her story, one signature at a time. By the time the sun began to dip, the hotel had grown quiet. The laughter from the pool faded, replaced by the soft hum of the waves brushing against the shore. I sat on the balcony of my new suite. The ocean spread out before me like an open truth. Lily was in the shower, humming off-key, and for the first time in days, I felt something close to peace, the fragile kind that comes before a storm. I pulled my phone from my purse and scrolled through the contacts until I found the name I hadn't dialed in years, Daniel Avery. He was an old friend from church, now a lawyer in Jacksonville, The kind of man who believed in fairness even when it wasn't fashionable. The phone rang 3 times before his familiar voice came through. Well, if it isn't Dolores Greene. It's been what, 10 years? Closer to 12, I said, smiling faintly. You still remember me? Hard to forget a woman who once organized half the church bake sales, he said warmly. What's going on, Dee? You sound steady, but serious. I hesitated, watching the sea roll and shift like a living thing. Daniel, I need some advice. The kind that doesn't fit neatly into small talk. Then you called the right person, he said. Start from the beginning. So I did. I told him about the trip, the promise of reimbursement, the money I'd saved, the group chat, the way they laughed and left me behind. I spoke quietly but clearly, the words smooth from days of silence. When I finished, there was a pause on his end. Only the sound of papers shifting. Dolores, he said finally, what your children did. That's not just unkind. That's financial exploitation. It's a form of elder abuse. The phrase made me flinch. Elder abuse. The words felt heavy, foreign, too large to fit the image I had of myself. He continued, if you covered those expenses under false promises, you're legally within your rights to reclaim that money, or press charges if necessary. I don't want to ruin anyone's life, I said softly. Then think of it as protecting your own, he replied. You've done more than enough giving. It's time you took something back. I looked down at my hands, still strong despite the years. What would I need to do? Document everything, he said. Receipts, messages, phone records. You said there's a group chat. Save it. Forward it to yourself. And Dolores, don't tell them what you're planning. Let the truth catch up to them before they can twist it. His voice was calm but firm, the kind of voice that steadies a trembling heart. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I've already started, I said. He chuckled softly. I should have known. You were always 10 steps ahead. For the first time that day, I laughed. A real laugh. Low and quiet, but honest. Maybe just 1 step this time. He paused, his tone softening. You know, Dee, some people spend their whole lives forgiving those who don't deserve it. You don't have to be one of them. That sentence sat between us, heavy with truth. When the call ended, I stayed on the balcony for a long time. The sky had turned the color of copper, the horizon fading into night. Down below, the pool lights shimmered like fragments of something once whole. Lily came out, hair damp, wrapped in a towel. Who were you talking to? An old friend, I said, smiling. He reminded me of something important. What's that? That I'm not powerless, I said simply. She nodded, not quite understanding, but sensing something had shifted. I watched her curl up on the couch with her book, her small fingers tracing each page like they mattered. In her, I saw what hope looks like before the world teaches it to shrink. As I turned off the balcony light, the reflection in the glass caught my eye. A woman older, steadier, unafraid. The night air felt different now. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was waiting. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The sky outside my window was still dark, but the edges were softening into gray. There's something sacred about that in-between hour, when the world hasn't yet decided what kind of day it's going to be. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the horizon shift from charcoal to rose, and felt a strange calm settle over me. For most of my life, I'd been defined by what I gave: money, time, forgiveness. But that morning, for the first time, I thought about what I had left to give myself. Lily stirred beneath her blanket, her small breaths steady. I didn't wake her. She was too young to carry the weight of her mother's choices, too innocent to be dragged into the storm I was preparing to release. I dressed quietly, a light blouse, soft slacks, the kind of clothes that don't draw attention but make you feel put together. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a tired woman. I saw someone waiting for her moment. By 7, I was downstairs in the lobby, coffee in hand. The staff greeted me with polite smiles, unaware that the polite grandmother they'd seen for days was about to turn the story upside down. I sat near the window, where the morning sun was starting to pour in. Every reflection of myself in the glass seemed sharper, clearer, as if the light was showing me who I'd been hiding all along. I pulled out my notebook and wrote a single word: respect. Not as a request, as a declaration. I remembered all the times I'd been quiet when I should have spoken. The birthdays they forgot, the holidays they canceled, the phone calls that never came, the apologies I'd whispered to keep the peace, even when I wasn't the one who'd done wrong. That life, that quiet, compliant version of me, ended today. When Marcus and the others came down for breakfast, I watched them from across the room. They looked so comfortable, so certain of their place in the world. Camille adjusted her sunglasses even indoors. Renee was already complaining about the service. I didn't approach them. Not yet. I just observed. Marcus spotted me first. He waved, casual, dismissive, like a man greeting a helpful employee. "Ma, there you are. You didn't confirm the dolphin tour yesterday." I met his gaze and smiled, calm, deliberate. "I didn't," I said. "And I won't." He frowned, not sure he'd heard correctly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said, standing slowly, "you'll be handling your own plans from now on." Renee laughed under her breath. "Mom, don't start being difficult. We're just trying to enjoy the vacation." Her tone might have broken me once, not today. "Difficult?" I said, stepping closer. "You haven't seen difficult yet." They exchanged glances, confused, slightly alarmed. I could almost see them calculating how much control they were losing. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. "No," I said firmly. "You've had your turn to talk. Now, you'll listen." For a heartbeat, the entire lobby felt still. Even the soft piano music seemed to fade. "I know about your group chat," I continued quietly. "The jokes, the plans to keep me out of your way, the comments about the money." Renee's face went pale. Camille looked down at her phone, pretending to scroll. Marcus tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "Ma, come on, it was just teasing." "Teasing?" I said. "You laughed about the woman who paid for this trip. You mocked the person who raised you. You turned kindness into comedy." Silence. No one met my eyes. "I used to believe that love meant staying quiet," I said, "that forgiveness was the same as strength. But I was wrong." Marcus shifted, defensive. "You're overreacting. We were going to pay you back." "Maybe," I said softly. "But now you won't have to." He blinked. "What?" "I've already canceled your rooms." The color drained from his face. "You did what?" "I spoke with the manager yesterday," I said evenly. "Your reservations end this afternoon. The charges are voided. You'll need to make new arrangements, somewhere else." Renee gasped. Camille's lips parted, but no words came. For once, their noise was gone. I stepped back, my voice steady. "You wanted a vacation without drama? Congratulations. You'll have it. Just not with me." And with that, I turned and walked out into the sunlight. Every step toward the ocean felt like a shedding, of fear, of guilt, of the weight of a lifetime spent earning love that was never returned. I didn't look back. Not once. They found me later that morning, sitting at a table by the window, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. The restaurant was full. Families laughing, children chasing each other between tables, the clatter of dishes and silverware blending with ocean wind drifting through the open doors. Marcus walked in first, his steps quick, his expression half embarrassed, half angry. Camille followed, arms folded, sunglasses perched like armor. Renee trailed behind, whispering something sharp to Trevor, who looked as though he wanted to disappear entirely. I didn't rise when they approached. I didn't even flinch. The calm I felt wasn't arrogance, it was clarity. "Ma," Marcus said, lowering his voice, "we need to talk." I gestured to the empty chairs. "Then sit." They hesitated before obeying, the three of them settling across from me like guilty children. "What is this?" Renee demanded. "Robert from the front desk said our rooms are being released at noon. He said you ordered it." "That's correct," I said. "I canceled them." Camille leaned forward, her voice trembling with controlled fury. You can't do that, Dolores. We have our things in there." "Your things are being packed," I said simply. "They'll be waiting for you at the concierge desk." Marcus rubbed his temples. "Ma, this isn't funny. Whatever you're trying to prove." "I'm not proving anything," I interrupted. "I'm reclaiming what's mine." They stared at me as if I'd spoken in another language. For years I'd been predictable, dependable, forgiving. They didn't recognize the woman sitting in front of them now. "I know about the group chat," I said quietly. "Vacation without drama. I know every word you wrote." The color drained from Camille's face. Renee opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "Don't," I said. "I've already heard enough." Marcus looked stunned, his mouth opening and closing before he found words. "Who showed you that?" "Your daughter," I said. "Because she still knows right from wrong." He glanced toward the lobby where Lily stood near the entrance, watching from a distance. His expression softened briefly. Guilt, maybe, but it faded as quickly as it came. "Ma, you're taking this the wrong way," he said. "We were joking. It wasn't serious." "You laughed about the woman who gave you everything," I said. "You mocked the person who worked herself sick to make sure you never went hungry." "Tell me, Marcus, when exactly did I become a punchline?" He looked down, unable to answer. Renee spoke next, her voice trembling between anger and shame. "We didn't mean to hurt you. You make things heavy sometimes." I tilted my head. "Heavy. I paid for your rooms, your meals, your little escape from drama. If that's heavy, maybe it's because you've forgotten what carrying looks like." Silence fell over the table. Outside, a seagull cried, a lonely sound that somehow fit perfectly. I leaned back, folding my hands. "Do you know what my lawyer called it?" I asked. "Financial exploitation. Elder abuse." Camille gasped. "You talked to a lawyer?" "Yes," I said. "I did. And I could press charges if I wanted. But I won't, not because you deserve mercy, but because I'm choosing peace. Something you clearly don't understand." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You're overreacting." I smiled, slow and tired. That word, overreacting, it's how you've kept me quiet for years. Every sigh, every tear, every truth I tried to speak, you reduced to emotion. Well, I'm not emotional now. I'm free. He stared at me, searching for the woman who used to back down. She wasn't there. I stood, smoothing the front of my blouse. "Your rooms will be released at noon. You'll need to find somewhere else to stay." Renee stood too, furious now. "You can't just abandon us here." I turned to her, meeting her glare with calm. "You abandoned me the moment you turned love into a transaction." Camille grabbed Marcus's arm, whispering something. He nodded slowly, defeated. "Come on," he muttered. "Let's go." As they walked out, I noticed Lily still standing by the lobby doors, her eyes wide, uncertain. When she saw me, she hesitated, then ran forward and hugged me tight. "Grandma," she whispered, "are you okay?" I stroked her hair, steadying my breath. "I'm fine, baby. Better than I've been in a long time." Across the room, guests pretended not to stare. I didn't care. I'd spent too much of my life shrinking to fit into other people's comfort. Today, I was standing tall in my own. When Lily pulled back, she smiled through tears. "They're gonna be mad." "Maybe," I said softly. "But sometimes anger is the first step to understanding." We left the restaurant hand in hand, the sound of waves calling from beyond the glass doors. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt like myself. They didn't take long to come back. By early afternoon, Marcus and Renee were storming through the lobby again, their anger louder than the ocean outside. Guests turned to stare. The front desk staff froze. But I didn't move. I sat in one of the lounge chairs by the window, sipping tea as if I'd been expecting them, because I had. Marcus's voice cut through the room. "You had no right to invade our privacy, Ma." I looked up slowly. "Privacy? You mean that group chat where you turned my generosity into a joke?" He flinched. "You went through our phones." "I didn't have to," I said. "You left the truth lying right in front of my granddaughter." Renee folded her arms, her voice sharp. You're blowing this out of proportion. It was just talk. I stood, calm but unyielding. You call it talk. I call it confession. They exchanged glances, nervous now. For the first time, they weren't in control. I sent those messages to my lawyer, I continued, pulling my phone from my purse. Every word of them. Camille appeared behind Marcus, pale and silent. You wouldn't, she whispered. I already did, I said, because I've learned that silence doesn't protect you. It only protects the people who hurt you. Marcus ran a hand over his face. God, Ma, what are you doing? You're tearing the family apart. No, I said, my tone steady. I'm holding a mirror up to it. The cracks were already there. For a long moment, no one spoke. The lobby had gone quiet again, the hum of the fountain the only sound. I could feel eyes on us, whispers forming at nearby tables. I didn't care. Renee stepped forward, lowering her voice. What do you want, Mom? Money back? An apology? I shook my head. Neither. I want accountability. Accountability? Marcus scoffed. You think humiliating us in public is going to fix anything? I'm not humiliating you, I said softly. You did that to yourselves. Camille's voice broke through, trembling but cold. So this is revenge? No, I said. This is me drawing a line. I handed Marcus a printed copy of their messages, the same ones I'd sent to my lawyer. Take these, I said. Read them, every word you wrote. Every joke you made at my expense. Then tell me if you'd still want your daughter to see you the same way Lily sees you now. His face paled, and for once he had no comeback. Lily stood nearby, watching, her eyes wide. I turned toward her gently. Sweetheart, go upstairs for a bit, okay? She hesitated. Are you sure? Yes, I said softly. Grown-up talk. When she disappeared into the elevator, I faced my children again. You made me feel like a burden in the very moment I was giving you everything I had left, I said. Do you know what that kind of betrayal does to a person? Renee's voice cracked. We didn't mean... Stop saying that, I interrupted, louder now. You meant it enough to write it. You meant it enough to laugh. You meant it enough to build a vacation around my silence. Marcus took a step forward, his tone defensive. You're acting like we stole from you. You did, I said. Not just money, my dignity. He froze. The weight of that word hung heavy between us. For a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who brought me wildflowers from the backyard, who used to cry when he thought he'd disappointed me. That boy was long gone, replaced by a man who had learned how to justify cruelty with convenience. You think this ends with you walking away? He said quietly. I don't think, I said. I know. I turned toward the clerk behind the desk. Robert, please confirm that rooms 504 and 506 are checked out. Robert nodded, eyes wide. Yes, Mrs. Greene. They've been released. Renee gasped. You actually did it. I met her gaze. I did. Camille muttered something under her breath and stormed toward the exit, dragging her suitcase behind her. Trevor followed, silent. Marcus stood frozen for a moment longer before grabbing his own bag. You'll regret this, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I shook my head. No, son. I already regret staying silent this long. As they left, the automatic doors whooshed open, letting in the sound of the sea, calm, constant, indifferent. I stood there, the quiet settling like a blanket around me. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel guilty. I felt whole. The afternoon sun was merciless, turning the hotel's white walls into blinding mirrors. The valet out front scrambled to carry luggage as my family stumbled out of the sliding doors, faces flushed with humiliation. Guests glanced over politely, curious but not cruel, the way people look when they sense a story they shouldn't witness. I stood just inside the lobby, my posture straight, my heart steady. Lily stood beside me, clutching her backpack. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. Marcus turned back once, his eyes narrowing. You really did it, he said, his voice a mix of disbelief and wounded pride. Yes, I replied. I did. You've embarrassed us, Camille snapped. In front of everyone. I tilted my head slightly. I gave you every chance to show respect quietly. You chose to make your lessons public. Renee's voice trembled, sharp as glass. You'll regret this when you're alone, Mom. You think you don't need us, but you do. Her words might have once pierced me, but not anymore. I met her gaze calmly. I've been alone in your presence for years. I gestured toward the open doors, toward the heat and the waiting cars. This is just honesty catching up. Trevor, awkward and uncomfortable, mumbled something about calling an Uber. Camille grabbed his arm, whispering furiously. Marcus dragged his suitcase toward the curb, muttering under his breath. Robert, the front desk clerk, approached quietly. Mrs. Greene, he said, keeping his tone neutral. Their accounts have been closed. Would you like us to escort them off property? I shook my head. No need. They know the way out. Marcus turned, his voice breaking between anger and shame. You've changed, Ma. I looked at him for a long time. No, I said softly. I just remembered who I was before you forgot. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. Even the lobby music seemed to hold its breath. Renee stepped closer, tears shining in her eyes. You're doing this because you're hurt. You'll forgive us later. You always do. Not this time, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Forgiveness isn't a door you get to keep walking through without ever knocking. Camille rolled her eyes, tugging at Marcus's sleeve. Come on, this is ridiculous. They turned and walked out. The automatic doors opened, letting the harsh sunlight flood in, and for a moment their figures were silhouettes, blurred, fading, smaller with every step. When they were gone, the doors closed behind them with a soft hiss, sealing the quiet like a final word. Lily slipped her hand into mine. Grandma? She said softly. Yes, baby. You're shaking. I looked down. She was right. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from release. The kind that comes after years of holding everything together. I squeezed her fingers gently. It's just the wind, sweetheart. It's finally moving again. We stood there for a moment, the two of us alone in the vast lobby. Robert cleared his throat gently. Your new suite is ready, Mrs. Greene. Room 912. We've already transferred your bags. I smiled. Thank you, Robert, and for your kindness. He nodded, understanding more than he said. You did the right thing. As Lily and I stepped into the elevator, I caught my reflection in the mirrored doors. My face looked different. Not younger, not lighter, but unafraid. Behind the tired eyes was something stronger, a quiet authority that didn't need to shout to be heard. When the elevator doors opened, I took one last look at the lobby below. It wasn't paradise anymore. It was a place of truth. And for the first time, I didn't envy those who were leaving. I pitied them. Because freedom, I realized, isn't about walking away from people. It's about walking back to yourself. The air outside was heavy with salt and sunlight. After everything that had happened, the world looked strangely new, sharper, quieter. Lily and I stood near the hotel's entrance, the sound of rolling suitcases fading behind us. I could still see Marcus and the others in the distance, arguing with the valet, their voices too far away to matter anymore. Lily tugged at my sleeve. Grandma, can we go now? Yes, baby, I said softly. We're leaving. A taxi pulled up to the curb, its yellow paint dulled by sea air. The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, leaned out the window. Need a ride, ma'am? Yes, I said, opening the door for Lily. Somewhere quiet by the water, please. As the car pulled away, I looked out the window, watching the hotel shrink behind us. For a long time, that building had been a monument to everything I'd sacrificed, my savings, my patience, my self-worth. Now it was just concrete and glass, fading into the distance. Lily pressed her forehead to the window. Do you think they're mad at us? I smiled faintly. Probably. But sometimes anger is what people feel when they're finally facing the truth. She looked at me curiously. Does the truth always hurt? Only when it's been hiding too long, I said. The taxi wound through quiet streets, lined with palm trees and small shops selling seashells and postcards. The air was filled with the distant crash of waves and the faint sweetness of sunscreen. After a few miles, we reached another hotel, smaller, older, the kind of place built for peace instead of show. The sign out front read, "The Ocean Rest Inn." I felt a pull in my chest, something that whispered, "Yes, this is yours." The driver helped us with our bags. I paid him in cash, adding a little extra. "Thank you," I said. He tipped his hat. "You have a good day, ma'am. You look like you earned it." Inside, the lobby smelled of lemon polish and salt air. A young woman behind the counter greeted us with an easy smile. "Checking in?" "Yes," I said. "For two." As she handed me the keys, Lily looked around, her eyes wide. "It's smaller," she said. "Yes," I said, smiling. "But smaller can mean better. More space for peace." When we reached our room, the door opened to a view of the beach. The sound of waves rolled in through the balcony doors, filling the room with rhythm and light. I set down my purse and exhaled. A deep, long breath that felt like release. Lily ran to the window. "Grandma, you can see the ocean from the bed." I laughed, the sound surprising me. "Then that's where I'll drink my coffee tomorrow." She turned, her face glowing. "Can we go down to the beach now?" "Go ahead," I said. "I'll join you in a minute." She ran off barefoot, the door slamming gently behind her. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around the quiet room. No noise, no arguments, no tension. Just the hum of the sea and the faint rustle of curtains in the wind. From my purse, I pulled out the empty cookie tin I had carried with me all this way. I'd packed it almost without thinking, maybe as a reminder of how far I'd come. I opened it and stared at the hollow space inside, the place where all my sacrifices had once lived. It didn't feel empty anymore, it felt symbolic. The sound of laughter drifted up from the beach, Lily's laughter, bright and free. I went to the balcony and watched her run along the shoreline, her footprints chasing the tide. The sun glinted off her hair, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a bystander in someone else's life. I felt like a woman who had finally stepped back into her own story. Behind me, my phone buzzed. Marcus's name flashed across the screen. I let it ring. Then another message. "We need to talk." I turned off the phone and set it face down on the dresser. "No," I whispered to myself. "You need to listen." Then I walked barefoot down to the sand to join my granddaughter. The waves were cool against my feet, the sun soft on my skin. Lily reached for my hand, grinning. "Race you to the water." We ran together, our laughter scattering like birds over the sea. For the first time in 70 years, I wasn't running to fix anyone. I was running toward myself. The next morning arrived gently. The sky over Palm Coast stretched wide and pale, streaked with the first soft threads of orange. The air was cooler now, the kind that smells like salt and promise. I woke before Lily, pulled the curtains open, and let the light spill across the room. For the first time in years, the day felt like it belonged to me. Outside, the beach was empty, except for a few early joggers and a man walking his dog along the tide. I slipped on my sandals, grabbed my sweater, and stepped quietly onto the balcony. The sound of the ocean was steady and kind. Not loud, not demanding, just there, a rhythm as old as forgiveness. I sat in one of the wicker chairs, watching the horizon shift from gray to gold. Somewhere inside me, the storm had gone still. The anger that had carried me through the last few days wasn't gone, but it had changed shape, no longer fire, but clarity. For so long, I had confused peace with silence. I'd thought that keeping quiet kept the love intact. But peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the presence of truth. Behind me, I heard Lily stir. "Grandma?" I turned. She was still half asleep, her hair messy, her eyes heavy. "Come here, baby," I said. "Watch this." She climbed into my lap, her head resting against my chest. Together, we watched the sun lift itself over the water. The light spread slowly, touching everything, the waves, the sand, the small fishing boats drifting in the distance. "It's so pretty," she whispered. "It is," I said. "Every morning is a new chance to start over. You just have to take it." She looked up at me. "Are you starting over too?" I smiled. I already did. We stayed there for a long time, not talking, just breathing in the quiet. Every sound, the cry of a gull, the crash of a wave, the whisper of wind through the palms, felt like a hymn written just for us. When the sun was high enough to warm our skin, we walked down to the beach. The sand was cool beneath our feet, the tide pulling softly at our toes. Lily ran ahead, collecting shells, her laughter ringing through the morning air. I followed slowly, letting my thoughts drift like the waves. I thought of Marcus and Renee, wherever they were now, maybe angry, maybe ashamed. Maybe, just maybe, thinking. I didn't hate them. That surprised me. Hate takes too much energy, and I'd spent enough of my life drained by other people's needs. What I felt now was distance, a healthy kind, the kind that lets wounds breathe. As I walked, I found a shell half buried in the sand, worn smooth by time and tide. I picked it up, turning it over in my palm. Its surface shimmered faintly in the sunlight, flawed but beautiful. That was me now, I thought. Flawed, weathered, but still shining. When Lily came running back, she held out a handful of shells. "We should make something with them," she said. "Like what?" "A necklace, one for you and one for me." I smiled. "That sounds perfect." We sat together on the sand, threading the shells with a piece of string she found in her pocket. Her fingers were clumsy, mine steadier. When she tied the knot, she held it up proudly. "See? Now we match." I slipped the necklace around my neck and felt the cool touch of the shell against my skin. It wasn't gold. It wasn't expensive. But it was the truest thing I'd ever worn. The morning passed slowly, sweetly. The sea breeze lifted the last traces of tension from my shoulders. When we finally walked back toward the hotel, I looked once more at the endless water and thought of all the years I'd lost trying to earn love. The ocean didn't earn anything. It just was, and that was enough. For the first time, I allowed that to be true for me too. That evening, the sky burned gold and violet over the horizon, and the sound of the sea folded softly around the edges of the world. The sun was sinking slow, deliberate, as if even it didn't want the day to end. I stood barefoot on the balcony of our quiet room at the Ocean Rest Inn, watching Lily chase the last waves of daylight across the sand. In that light, she looked free, untangled from all the noise, untouched by the weight of what had come before. I thought of how much I'd spent trying to build that kind of peace for others, never realizing it had to start with me. For 70 years, I had been the backbone, the safety net, the voice that soothed everyone but myself. Tonight, for the first time, I didn't feel tired. I felt present. The ocean breeze lifted my hair and brushed against my skin like a benediction. Below, the tide rolled in and out with a sound like breathing, patient, certain, alive. Lily came running back from the beach, cheeks flushed, holding 2 paper cups of lemonade. "Grandma," she said, panting, "you have to see the sunset from down there. It's like the sky's on fire." I smiled, taking a sip. "Then let's not miss it." We walked down together, our sandals dangling from our hands. The sand was cool now, smooth underfoot, still carrying the heat of the day. I let her run ahead again, her laughter threading through the hum of the sea. As I watched her, I realized how quiet my heart had become. Not empty, but peaceful. The kind of peace that comes when you stop asking permission to exist. I thought about Marcus and Renee. I didn't know where they were, or what they were saying about me now. Maybe they were still angry. Maybe they were embarrassed. Maybe, in some quiet moment, they were starting to understand. And maybe they weren't. Either way, it no longer defined me. For the first time in a long time, my worth wasn't hanging on anyone's approval. It was resting in my own hands, steady, weathered, and sure. I sat down on the sand, letting the tide brush my feet, and took out my notebook. The last page was still blank. I wrote slowly, carefully, each word a small vow. You will not shrink again. You will not apologize for surviving. You will choose yourself even when it hurts. You will never trade dignity for love again. I closed the notebook, the wind tugging gently at its cover, and looked at the horizon one last time. The sky had softened to amber, and the first stars were beginning to appear. Shy, but certain. Lily sat beside me, resting her head against my shoulder. "Do you think we'll come back here?" she asked. I smiled. "Maybe, but if we don't, promise me you'll remember this place. Not for what happened before, but for what started here." She nodded solemnly. "I will." As darkness folded around us, the sound of the waves filled the silence. Steady, forgiving. I breathed in deep, tasting the salt, the freedom, the newness of it all. I had lost a ring, a family's respect, and a version of myself that no longer fit. But what I gained was bigger, something no one could take or twist again. My life wasn't ending, it was restarting. And this time, it belonged only to me. I never imagined my story would end like this. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't come from apologies or explanations, but from finally understanding your own worth. When I look back now, I don't see a victim in that hotel lobby anymore. I see a woman who woke up in the middle of her own life and decided she wasn't done yet. You see, there's a moment in every person's life, especially in a woman's, when she realizes no one is coming to rescue her. That moment can break you, or it can set you free. For me, it did both. My children will tell their version of what happened. Maybe in their story, I overreacted. Maybe they'll say I made a scene. Maybe they'll call me ungrateful for all the love they think they gave. But truth doesn't need their permission to exist. The truth is simple. I spent decades being the quiet provider, the one who fixed what others broke, the one who paid the price, literally, for peace. And peace paid me back by teaching me how to leave. When I canceled those rooms, I wasn't being cruel. I was teaching a lesson that kindness had failed to teach, that love without respect is not love at all. People talk about dignity like it's something you earn from others. But dignity isn't given. It's claimed. It's that quiet decision you make when the world underestimates you, and you decide to stand anyway. Since that day, I've learned how to fill my mornings with silence and my nights with gratitude. I wake up to the sound of waves instead of voices demanding more. I drink my coffee slowly. I read again. I laugh more than I thought possible. And Lily, my sweet Lily, she sees me differently now. Not just as her grandmother, but as a woman who chose to live. She asks questions, curious and brave, and I answer them honestly. I tell her that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "No more." If you're listening to me right now, and you've ever been the one who gave too much, who was taken for granted, who mistook silence for peace, I want you to know this. It's never too late to draw a line. It's never too late to start over. Because starting over isn't erasing the past. It's reclaiming your future. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm just finally free. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Forgiveness is a gift you can give others, but self-respect, that's the gift you keep for yourself. Now tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Leave your story in the comments. Let me know your city, your heart, your truth. Don't forget to subscribe, to share, to support stories like this one. Stories of strength, survival, and dignity reclaimed. And if this touched something in you, maybe take a moment to watch another story. Perhaps one where healing begins, where heartbreak once lived. See you in the next life story with love and respect.